What if almost every single dollar spent on the thousands of advertisements you saw today was just completely wasted?
Just gone.
Right, evaporated. I mean, what if, despite the hundreds of billions of dollars spent globally on marketing, your brain actually has this built-in automatic industrial dump that instantly deletes like 99% of brand messaging before you even consciously register it?
It sounds like a total exaggeration,
Yeah.
honestly. But when you look at the underlying neurology, it is the stark reality.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes against almost everything the modern business world is built upon, but, well, human biology doesn't really care about a company's marketing budget.
Exactly. We walk through the world believing we make rational, conscious choices about what we buy. We really think we're in the driver's seat, you know?
Oh,
If
absolutely.
I buy, I don't know, a certain brand of coffee or a specific car, I think it's because I weighed the pros and cons, looked at the price, and made this highly logical decision.
Right, the classic rational consumer model.
But the reality is, our brains are actively hiding the truth from us. So our goal for this deep dive today is to unlock the vault of the subconscious mind. We're going to look at the invisible biological machinery that dictates why we actually buy what we buy.
And why almost everything companies think they know about you, the consumer, is just dead wrong.
Completely dead wrong.
Because, look, we are living through an unprecedented crisis of information overload right now.
Yeah.
And the reason traditional business strategies, market research, focus groups, why they're fundamentally failing is because they treat human beings like rational calculators.
Which we are not.
Not even close. They completely ignore the deep evolutionary programming that actually runs the show.
So here's the mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring the birth of a field called neuromarketing. We're going to dive into the largest, most comprehensive brain scanning study ever conducted on consumers.
It's a massive study.
Huge. And for anyone listening, whether you are an entrepreneur trying to pitch a startup, an artist trying to get your work noticed, or just, someone fascinated by human psychology,
Understanding this invisible biological filter is critical.
it is quite literally the difference between launching an idea that changes the world and launching one that vanishes into thin air within 3 months.
Yeah, but it requires peeling back the layers of our own perceived rationality.
Right.
We have to peer behind the curtain of conscious thought and look at the raw, unfiltered biological data.
So to understand how any idea or product can actually reach us, we first have to understand how expertly, how ruthlessly our brains block them out.
The filter is relentless.
It really is. Just think about your daily routine. You wake up, grab your phone, and there are sponsored posts instantly in your feed.
Right away.
You walk to the kitchen, open the pantry, and there's a wall of branded packaging. You drive to work, passing highway billboards, listening to, audio ads, seeing logos plastered on the sides of trucks.
It's endless.
You walk into a modern grocery store, and there are upwards of 40,000 distinct products screaming for your attention. 40,000.
Yeah, brands are coming at us at full speed from all
It's like-
directions, continuously. And the sheer volume is an assault on the senses that the human brain was simply never designed to handle.
Not at all.
Evolutionarily speaking, our brains were built to track, like, a few dozen familiar faces: the movement of prey, the changing of the weather, local geography.
Basic survival stuff.
Exactly. And now we are asking that exact same biological hardware to process thousands of highly engineered corporate messages a day. So the brain does what it must to survive that onslaught. It filters.
There's this brilliant analogy in the source material that perfectly captures how this filter operates in real time.
Oh, the room key.
Yes, the hotel room key.
Yeah.
Think about the last time you traveled and walked into a new hotel room.
Right?
You've been on a plane, you navigated a strange city, maybe you crossed a couple of time zones, so you walk through that hotel room door, and your brain is aggressively processing a massive amount of high-priority information.
Right. It's taking in the new environment.
Exactly. You're registering the layout of the room, checking the temperature, thinking about where to find food, maybe worrying about your morning meeting.
All high-stakes cognitive tasks.
Right. And in the middle of all that processing, you toss your plastic hotel room key down on the bed or the nightstand, and almost instantly, you forget where it is.
It just vanishes entirely from your conscious awareness.
Completely wiped. And why does that happen? Because your short-term memory has a very strict, highly limited capacity.
It does.
It is constantly playing this high-stakes game of triage. Every second, it decides what gets filed away in long-term storage and what gets tossed into the mental trash can as extraneous clutter.
And for the modern consumer, most brands and advertisements are the equivalent of that hotel room key.
Just mental trash.
Yeah, because the mechanism behind this is fascinating. The brain takes in roughly 11 million bits of information every single second through our senses.
11 million.
11 million bits per second.
Hmm.
But our conscious mind can only process about 50 bits per second.
That disparity is just insane.
It's astronomical.
Yeah.
The thing is, conscious attention is incredibly metabolically expensive.
What do you mean by metabolically expensive? Like it burns calories.
Literally, yes.
Mhm.
The brain makes up only about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our energy. It requires a massive amount of glucose and oxygen.
Wow.
So if your brain tried to consciously process, evaluate, and remember every single advertisement you saw on a commute, you would be paralyzed by metabolic exhaustion before you even reached your desk.
That makes so much sense. It's exactly like having 100 browser tabs open on an old computer.
That's a great way to put it.
At a certain point, the fan starts spinning out of control, the laptop gets burning hot, and the operating system realizes it's about to crash.
Right.
So it just starts force-quitting tabs to save RAM for the essential background tasks, like, keeping your heart beating and navigating traffic. The brain just force-quits the advertising tabs.
Exactly. It has to.
But I have a question here, and it's something I think a lot of people wonder when they hear this.
Sure. If our brains are so ruthlessly efficient at force-quitting this noise, how does anything ever make it into long-term memory?
That is the million-dollar question.
Like, is it just a sheer numbers game? Do companies just need to buy more billboards and yell louder until the operating system crashes and lets them in?
That is the exact trap most businesses fall into, and it is entirely, completely wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they think the solution to a biological filter is volume and frequency. They think, well, if we just run the ad 10 times instead of 2, eventually they will remember it.
Which seems logical on the surface.
Right, but biology actively resists that. Remember, this filter is a survival mechanism. It is highly adaptive. When you yell louder, the brain just builds a thicker wall.
Wow. Okay, so what gets through?
The only things that bypass the filter are things that signal high biological or emotional relevance.
Meaning things that relate to, like survival, danger, reproduction, or social status.
Precisely. The brain is scanning that 11 million bits of data for things that matter to its continued existence and well-being.
If a message doesn't trigger an emotional response, if it doesn't hook into our deeply held beliefs, our fears, or our desires, it is categorized as noise. It becomes the room key.
It's just force quit.
Exactly. So if you are pitching a new startup or even just trying to get your team on board with a new project at work, you cannot win by simply adding more data to the presentation.
You can't just talk louder.
No, you cannot win with more noise. You have to speak the language of the subconscious or you will be filtered out.
Okay, so if the brain is successfully filtering out 99% of everything, how do businesses currently figure out what actually makes it through the filter?
Well, historically, they've done the most intuitive thing possible. They just ask us.
Right. They stop us in the mall with a clipboard, or they pay us $50 to sit in a sterile room for a focus group, and they ask, do you like this product? Will you buy it?
Yeah, but asking the conscious mind to explain the unconscious mind is a recipe for absolute disaster.
It really is.
It is the great foundational flaw of 20th century market research. We built an entire global industry on the assumption that humans are transparent to themselves.
And the proof that this assumption is flawed is just, it's right there in the failure rate. Look at the data on new consumer products.
It's staggering.
8 out of 10 new product launches fail within their first 3 months on the shelf. 80%.
And it gets worse in certain markets.
Yeah, in highly saturated markets like Japan, the failure rate is an astounding 9.7 out of 10.
Which is almost total failure.
Think about the scale of that failure. We are talking about millions of dollars in research and development, years of packaging design, massive marketing campaigns.
All going up in smoke.
Exactly, because the traditional tools of market research are fundamentally broken.
They are broken because they rely on the illusion of rationality.
Right.
Traditional quantitative data, which tells you what's sold and where, and qualitative data, like surveys and phone interviews, both assume that people actually know why they buy things.
But they don't.
They really don't.
Yeah.
When you buy a sleek new smartphone or a specific brand of coffee or a certain cut of jeans, you don't actually know the true neurological origin of that decision.
Because something like 85% of the time, our brains are running completely on autopilot.
Yes.
It's not that people sitting in focus groups are malicious or that they are intentionally lying to researchers to mess up the data.
No, they're trying to be helpful usually.
Right. It's that their conscious minds literally do not have access to the true unconscious drivers of their own behavior.
The way we construct our reality is a bit unsettling when you look at it closely. Our conscious mind, the voice in your head that you think of as you, it acts much more like a public relations representative than a CEO.
Oh, I love that analogy, a PR rep.
Yeah, the actual decision is made down in the subconscious biological depths of the brain, driven by emotion, memory, instinct.
The CEO makes the call.
Exactly. Then, milliseconds later, the conscious mind is handed the decision. Its job is just to quickly invent a rational-sounding reason for why we did it so we don't feel like erratic, out-of-control animals.
PR rep just spins the narrative.
They read the press release.
Right. They say, oh, I bought this expensive car because it has great safety ratings, when the subconscious reality is, I bought it because I want my neighbors to think I'm successful.
Exactly. And that post hoc rationalization is what focus groups are measuring. They're measuring the PR spin, not the actual decision-making process.
There is a perfect example of this in the deep dive sources that illustrates exactly how this disconnect plays out in a real room.
The hand gel study.
Yes, the Pure Al antibacterial gel study. Let's paint the picture of this focus group for a second.
Sure.
You have a sterile room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a big two-way mirror on the wall, and a table full of busy, stressed-out mothers.
Okay.
The moderator brings out this new antibacterial hand gel and asks the group, how important is germ protection to you?
And you have to look at the social dynamics of that specific room. It's crucial.
Right. These women are sitting in a room with complete strangers, knowing they're being observed through a mirror.
They know their researchers are watching.
The cultural and social pressure to be perceived as a good, responsible mother is immense. So consciously, the PR representative in their brains steps up to the microphone.
They go into spin mode.
They say, oh, germ protection is incredibly important to me. I worry about E. coli and strep throat constantly. I need to protect my family, so I would absolutely buy this gel.
That is the stated preference. That is what the clipboard records as a win.
But their actual biological reaction to the product in that moment might be complete apathy. Or worse, it might be subconscious revulsion.
Right, because of the sensory input.
Exactly. Maybe the gel has a sharp medicinal smell that triggers an unconscious association with a terrifying hospital visit.
Or maybe the texture is slightly sticky.
Right, which triggers an evolutionary disgust response. Because stickiness in nature often signals decay or contamination.
This is the critical gap. There is a nanosecond lapse before a feeling is translated into language.
A literal nanosecond.
Yes. In that nanosecond, the actual biological decision is made. The primitive brain smells the gel, feels the stickiness, and says, no, avoid this. Danger.
Wow.
But by the time the moderator asks the question, language gets involved. And language is inherently social. Once you have to speak, cultural biases, peer pressure, self-image, all of that alters the truth.
Because the PR rep takes over.
Exactly. The conscious mind filters the biological reality, the disgust, through the lens of societal expectation, the need to be a good mom. And so the biological no becomes a verbal yes.
Which means the company takes that clipboard data, produces millions of bottles of the gel, puts it on store shelves, and then nobody buys it.
It fails within 3 months.
Because when that mother is alone in the grocery aisle without the social pressure of the focus group and the two-way mirror, she reaches for the gel, her subconscious remembers the sticky texture, and she just keeps walking.
Think about how this applies beyond just buying hand sanitizer. Stated preferences constantly contradict actual biological and emotional responses.
It's true for everything.
If you are an entrepreneur and you build a prototype and you show it to 10 friends and they all say, oh, this is brilliant, I would definitely be $20 for this.
You cannot take that as gospel.
No, it is mostly useless data because when the moment comes for them to actually open their wallets, the PR representative shuts up, the subconscious takes over, and the subconscious might have a completely different agenda.
So if we acknowledge that we cannot trust what people say because they literally don't know what they want, how do we figure it out?
We have to look at what your brains actually do.
Right. We have to bypass the mouth entirely and directly interview the brain. And that brings us to the radical multi-million-dollar solution at the heart of this deep dive.
The birth of neuromarketing.
Exactly.
It is the point where hard neuroscience and commerce finally intersect. For decades, neuroscience was strictly a medical field. focused on curing diseases or understanding trauma.
Fixing broken brains.
Right. Applying those same highly sophisticated medical tools to understand why someone chooses a blue toothbrush over a red one was a massive paradigm shift.
And the scale of the foundational study we were looking at is just completely unprecedented.
It really was.
We aren't talking about 20 college students getting paid a few bucks in a basement lab. This was an experiment that cost $7 million.
$7 million.
It spanned 3 years and involved over 2,000 test subjects across 5 different countries.
A truly global sample size.
Yeah, and to map the biological landscape of consumer desire, they utilized 2 very specific, very powerful pieces of technology, fMRI and SST.
To understand how monumental this is, we need to understand what these tools actually do because they measure very different things.
Yeah, let's break that down. Let's start with SST, or steady-state topography, because honestly, it sounds like something from a cyberpunk novel.
It does sound like sci-fi.
Yeah.
SST basically involves the subject wearing a cap fitted with sensors that measure electrical activity at the scalp.
So it's like an EEG?
Very similar, yes. It is tracking the brain's electrical signals in real time. The massive advantage of SST is temporal resolution.
Meaning speed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is incredibly fast. It can measure changes in brain activity millisecond by millisecond.
Wow.
So if you show someone a 30-second television commercial, SST can tell you exactly which specific half-second of the ad triggered an engagement response and which half-second caused them to zone out.
So SST is giving us the when. It's tracking the precise speed of the reaction to a specific frame of video.
Exactly. But its weakness is spatial resolution.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means it can't look deep inside the physical structures of the brain to see exactly where that electrical activity is originating from.
Ah, so it knows something happened, but not exactly which room in the house the light turned on in.
Perfect analogy. And that is where the second tool comes in, the fMRI.
The functional magnetic resonance imaging machine. The giant loud tube you go into at the hospital.
Right. fMRI doesn't measure electrical impulses. It measures blood flow.
Blood flow,
Yeah.
not electricity.
Correct. Specifically, it tracks blood oxygenation. When a very specific, deep region of your brain starts working harder, like the amygdala processing fear or the hippocampus retrieving a memory, it requires more fuel.
So it pulls in more oxygen.
It pulls in oxygen-rich blood. And because oxygenated blood has slightly different magnetic properties than deoxygenated blood, the powerful magnets in the fMRI scanner can actually detect that tiny fluctuation.
So the fMRI acts like a highly precise 3D map.
Exactly.
It shows you exactly which millimeter of brain tissue is demanding blood at any given moment.
Yes. It provides the where, but it's slower than SST because blood takes a couple of seconds to physically rush to the area.
Right, electricity is instant, blood takes a beat.
Exactly. So by combining the two, the lightning-fast electrical tracking of SST and the deep 3D structural mapping of the fMRI researchers suddenly had a complete picture.
They had a window into the subconscious that bypassed the PR representative entirely.
They could see the CEO making the decision.
Let's contextualize what this actually means for the business world. Imagine a Venn diagram.
Okay. You have 2 big overlapping circles representing the old, flawed ways of doing things. One circle is quantitative research, the hard data of what's sold last quarter.
The spreadsheets.
Right. The other circle is qualitative research. The focus groups and surveys that we now know are full of post hoc rationalizations.
Big clipboard data.
Neuromarketing represents a brand new third circle, and that tiny overlap right in the center of all 3.
That is the holy grail.
That is the future of truly understanding human desire.
But, and we have to say this, introducing a tool this powerful into the commercial sphere is not without severe friction.
Oh, absolutely not. We have to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
This idea gives a lot of people the absolute creeps, and for good reason.
The ethical concerns are massive.
Huge. Consumer advocacy groups like Commercial Alert have actively petitioned governments, pleading with them to halt neuromarketing research.
They're very vocal about it.
Their fear is that this isn't just market research. It is essentially the development of a super mind-reading device.
Yeah. They worry it will be used to subjugate the human mind, to artificially induce cravings for junk food or dangerous products, or worse, to engineer inescapable political propaganda.
It sounds less like marketing and more like dystopian mind control.
Exactly. So how do the researchers defend this?
Well, the defense often presented by those pioneering this field is that neuromarketing is simply a tool devoid of inherent morality. It is like a hammer.
A hammer.
Yes, a hammer can be used maliciously to break a window or harm someone, but its primary intended purpose is to build a house.
Right.
The argument is that, used ethically, neuromarketing helps companies stop guessing. It helps them create products and messages that we genuinely find meaningful, rather than relying on endless, annoying repetition or psychological trickery to sell us things we don't really want.
I hear that defense, I really do, but I have to push back pretty hard on the hammer analogy.
Go for it.
Let's really look at that. A hammer is a blunt, visible instrument. If you swing a hammer at me, I can see it coming. I can duck.
That's a fair point.
Neuromarketing is invisible. It bypasses my conscious defenses to figure out my deepest, darkest insecurities without my explicit, informed consent in the moment of purchase.
It operates below the radar.
Right. If a massive multinational corporation knows exactly what my subconscious craves, if they map my brain and find the precise biological button to push to make me buy a sugary drink when I'm feeling lonely or a new car when I'm feeling insecure, doesn't that inherently strip away my free will?
It's a heavy question.
How is that just a hammer?
It is a profound philosophical question, and you are highlighting the exact boundary where persuasion bleeds into manipulation.
It feels like a very thin line.
It is. The fear is entirely justified. However, there is a fascinating paradox embedded in this research that we have to consider.
What paradox?
The very same technology that exposes our vulnerabilities also provides the blueprint for our defense.
How so?
By studying our own irrational behaviors, by uncovering the biology of why we buy, we as consumers actually stand to gain more control over our actions, not less.
Wait, how does knowing that a corporation has a map of my subconscious give me control? That sounds like telling me that knowing the casino has rigged the slot machines makes me a better gambler.
No, it's about self-awareness and breaking the automatic loop.
Okay, unpack that.
Right now, most consumers are sleepwalking. The PR representative in their head is convincing them they are making logical choices, while their biology is being actively manipulated by external cues.
Like colors, smells, sounds.
Exactly. The spatial arrangements in stores, they are slaves to their biological reactions because they are totally blind to them.
Right.
But the moment you understand that neural marketing exists, the moment you learn how the trick is performed, the dynamic changes.
It's like learning the mechanics of a magic trick.
Precisely.
When you are sitting in the audience and you don't know the secret, the magician vanishing a coin looks like impossible sorcery. You are completely fooled.
You believe the illusion.
But once someone shows you how the magician palms the coin and drops it in his sleeve, the illusion is broken forever. You can never unsee the mechanics. You watch the hands, not the coin.
Exactly. So when you understand that a certain fast food logo uses specific shades of red and yellow because those wavelengths of light have been shown to subconsciously stimulate appetite and urgency.
Oh, like McDonald's or Wendy's.
Right. The next time you drive past that sign and suddenly feel hungry, you can pause. You can step back and say, wait, am I actually hungry? Or is my visual cortex just responding to the yellow arch?
You can intercept the PR rep.
Yes. You recognize the physiological sensation, but you don't blindly obey it. You make a deliberate, mindful choice. You take the power back from the autopilot.
So the defense against the fMRI hammer is the knowledge generated by the hammer itself.
It's empowering in a way.
That is wild. All right, so we have this ultimate tool, this incredible window into the blood flow and electrical storms of the brain.
The ultimate truth machine.
What happens when researchers take this tool and point it at one of the most heavily funded, universally accepted, and aggressive advertising campaigns in human history?
We get a result that literally turns the medical, political, and marketing worlds upside down.
This is the part of the deep dive that just stops you in your tracks. Let's set the physical scene for this part of the study.
Okay.
Imagine an antiseptic, cold medical laboratory in London.
Very clinical.
In the center of the room is this massive, clanking $4 million fMRI machine. It looks like a giant, sculpted white donut with a long, hard mechanical bed sliding into the center.
And it's loud. The magnets are incredibly loud.
Right. And waiting outside in the rainy London weather is the first batch of test subjects. They are a group of jittery, anxious, chain-smoking volunteers who have been explicitly forbidden from smoking a cigarette for the 4 hours leading up to the scan.
So they are biologically primed.
Highly primed.
Their nicotine levels have dropped. Their receptors are screaming. They are in a state of acute craving.
Right. And the core mystery the researchers are trying to solve with these prime subjects is a global
Cool.
paradox.
Massive one.
Over the last few decades, governments around the world have spent billions and billions of dollars on aggressive anti-smoking campaigns.
A billion.
They have mandated these gruesome, horrific warning labels on cigarette packs. We've all seen them.
Oh, yeah, they're unavoidable.
High-definition pictures of black lung tumors, gangrenous toes, open throat sores, rotting teeth, alongside massive bold black text reading, "Smoking kills" or "Fum Armata."
It is entirely designed to terrify.
And yet, despite this massive, highly visible global effort, people still smoke something like 5,763 billion cigarettes a year.
5,763 billion.
The numbers barely budge. Why?
To find out, they had to put these smokers into the giant donut one by one. And the setup here is crucial.
Walk us through it.
Well, the subject's head is immobilized inside the magnetic tube. They use a small angled mirror inside the machine to flash a series of images directly into their line of sight.
So they can't look away.
No, they're staring right at it. And they projected these exact gruesome warning labels. The tumors, the teeth, the bold text.
And while the images are flashing, the subjects have a little push-button box in their hands, right?
Yes.
The researchers asked them, rate your desire to smoke right now on a scale while looking at these horrific images.
And consciously, the subjects are doing exactly what the mothers in the focus group did with the hand gel.
The PR rep steps up.
Exactly. They press the button, indicating that their desire to smoke has decreased. They see a tumor, and they tell the researchers, yes, this makes me want to smoke less. This is working.
But the fMRI is watching the blood.
The fMRI is watching the blood. And Dr. Gemma Calvert, the lead researcher, analyzed the scans.
And what did she find?
When the brain data was processed, the finding was explosive. The warning labels, all the billions of dollars of horrific, terrifying imagery, had zero effect on suppressing the smoker's biological craving.
Has none.
Absolutely zero. The areas of the brain associated with fear or aversion didn't show the expected suppression of the addiction pathways at all.
But it doesn't stop there, does it?
Yeah.
It gets so much crazier. Not only did the warnings fail to suppress the craving, the fMRI scan showed that the gruesome images actually stimulated a very specific, deeply buried area of the brain.
The nucleus accumbens.
Tell us about the nucleus accumbens.
This is where the biology of addiction really reveals itself. The nucleus accumbens is a chain link of specialized neurons located deep in the basal forebrain.
Okay.
In neuroscience, it is widely known as the brain's craving spot.
The craving spot.
Yes, it is the central hub of the reward circuit. It's the region that lights up and demands a fix during any addictive behavior, whether that is smoking, gambling, taking illicit drugs, or even compulsive shopping.
So it's the center of all vices, basically.
Essentially, when the nucleus accumbens is stimulated, it floods the system with an absolute demand for gratification.
So let's connect the dots here, because the ultimate irony is almost too dark to believe.
It is dark.
The billions of dollars spent by well-meaning governments and health organizations on these terrifying warning labels, campaigns intended to save lives and reduce cancer, accidentally created the greatest marketing tool in history for the tobacco industry.
It backfired completely.
The warning labels weren't stopping the smoking. They were biologically triggering the urge to smoke.
It is a profound, tragic demonstration of the absolute disconnect between conscious intent and subconscious biology.
I am still trying to wrap my head around how a picture of a rotting lung makes someone crave a cigarette.
It seems insane, right?
It does. Let's look at a specific person from the study to ground this. Take one of the test subjects, a woman named Marlene.
Ah, Marlene.
She's a mother. She describes herself as a party smoker. Before she even goes into the fMRI machine, she sits in the waiting room and fills out a written questionnaire.
The standard qualitative research.
Right. She's explicitly asked, do these warning labels make you smoke less? And she checks yes. She genuinely believes it.
She's not trying to deceive anyone.
But then she goes into the scanner, sees the labels, and the fMRI shows her nucleus accumbens lighting up like a fireworks display. Her brain is screaming for nicotine.
It wants a cigarette badly.
So my question is, was Marlene just lying on the questionnaire because she wanted to look like a responsible mom?
No. And this is the most crucial psychological insight of the entire study. Marlene was not lying to the researchers.
She wasn't.
No. She was experiencing profound cognitive dissonance, and her conscious brain was translating a biological signal incorrectly.
Walk me through that translation process. How does she mistake a massive craving for a desire to quit?
Think about the stress response loop.
Okay.
Marlene knows consciously that smoking is deadly. She is a mother. She feels the societal judgment. She looks at a picture of a black lung on a cigarette pack.
Which is stressful.
Highly stressful. That image induces an immediate spike of physiological stress and anxiety. Now, how has Marlene, as a smoker, conditioned her brain to deal with stress and anxiety for the last 10 years?
By smoking a cigarette. The cigarette is the biological soothing mechanism for stress.
Exactly. The warning label causes stress. The brain registers stress and immediately triggers the nucleus accumbens to demand the habitual soothing mechanism, which is the cigarette.
So the body reacts to the fear with craving?
Yes. Her body reacts with a sudden, powerful physiological jolt of craving. But here is where the PR representative steps in.
Oh, the PR rep is back.
Right. Her conscious mind feels that intense jolt in her chest. But filtered through her self-image as a responsible mother and the societal expectation that warning labels are bad, her conscious mind rationalizes that biological jolt of craving as guilt or fear.
Wow.
The PR rep says, I feel a very strong emotion looking at this rotting lung. Therefore, I must feel terribly guilty about smoking. Therefore, this warning label must be working.
She completely misread her own biological signals.
She truly believed the craving was guilt.
The machine triggered a craving, but she consciously labeled it as a desire to quit. That is terrifying.
It is. And the practical application of this insight extends far, far beyond tobacco regulation.
How so?
Because good intentions do not equal good outcomes if you ignore human biology. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are trying to achieve.
It applies to everything.
Everything. You could be a manager trying to motivate a struggling team with stern warnings about missed targets.
Or a parent trying to discipline a teenager by yelling about consequences.
Exactly. You could be an entrepreneur trying to solve a customer's pain point by highlighting how bad their current situation is. If you do not understand the physiological subconscious reality of the people you are communicating with, your efforts might be achieving the exact opposite of your goal.
You might think you're deterring bad behavior by showing them a warning label.
While biologically, you're triggering the exact stress loop that reinforces the behavior.
You think you're hitting the brakes, but you are actually wiring the brake pedal directly to the accelerator.
Precisely. You're feeding the beast you're trying to starve.
So what does this all mean? Let's take a breath and synthesize this massive journey we've just been on.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. We started with the realization that the modern human brain is a master filter. Because of the sheer volume of information, it blocks out almost all the noise and brand messaging we encounter daily.
That's the room key phenomenon. The operating system force-quitting the tabs to save RAM.
Right. Then we explored the failure of traditional market research. We saw that simply asking people what they want is deeply flawed because our conscious minds are mostly just PR representatives justifying decisions we didn't even know we made.
The failed focus groups, like the Purell gel, prove that conscious language cannot accurately translate subconscious biology.
And finally, we saw the undeniable visual proof inside the fMRI scanner. When push comes to shove, the subconscious mind completely overrides conscious logic.
Every time.
A warning label designed by the smartest health experts in the world to induce fear instead triggers a biological craving because they didn't understand the neurological stress loop.
If there is one single memorable insight to pull from all of this data, the true soul of this research, it is that human beings are not rational calculators who occasionally get emotional.
No, we are fundamentally irrational.
We are emotional biological creatures driven by a hidden neurological engine. Our personal biology dictates our choices milliseconds before our conscious minds even realize a decision is on the table.
So if you want to succeed in business, if you want to communicate an idea effectively, or if you simply want to protect yourself as a consumer navigating a world designed to manipulate you, you have to stop speaking entirely to the logical brain.
You have to start understanding, respecting, and defending against the power of the subconscious.
Which leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative thought to ponder as you go about your day.
And this is a big one. If the most gruesome, terrifying images of disease can actually trigger a biological craving in smokers, look around your own life.
Yeah, take an inventory.
What other warnings, restrictions, or bad news in your daily routine are you consciously telling yourself you hate, while your nucleus accumbens is secretly addicted to the rush?
Oh, that is a dangerous question.
Think about it. Are you constantly complaining about doom scrolling on social media, telling everyone how much you hate the negativity, while your biology is actually craving that precise hit of outrage?
Or agonizing over stressful work emails late at night, claiming you want work-life balance.
While your subconscious is actually addicted to the cortisol and the feeling of being essential.
The conscious mind lies.
The biology doesn't.
That is deeply unsettling, but incredibly important to think about. We are not who we tell ourselves we are.
We really aren't.
Now that we know the subconscious is firmly in the driver's seat, what happens when companies stop trying to yell at us with billboards and instead try to sneak their products directly into the entertainment we already love?
That's a whole different level of manipulation.
It is. Next time, we are going to dive into the billion-dollar world of product placement. We'll look at the reality show American Idol, and we will uncover exactly why one of the world's biggest car companies made a multi-million-dollar neurological mistake. You won't want to miss it.
What if the gruesome, terrifying warning labels on cigarette packs, the ones with the blackened lungs and the throat tumors, what if they actually make smokers want to light up more?
I mean, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it? We all just kind of naturally assume fear is a deterrent.
Right, you see a scary picture, you stop the behavior.
Exactly. But when you bypass what a person actually says and you look directly at what their brain is doing, well, the data tells a completely different and frankly, a pretty shocking story.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, those warnings can actually act as a biological green light.
Here's where it gets really interesting. For everyone listening, I want you to picture a rainy, overcast day in London.
A classic London day.
Right, exactly. And a group of fidgety, highly anxious smokers are clustered outside this massive medical clinic. They're, swapping lighters, pacing the wet pavement, and just frantically chain smoking as fast as they can.
Because they know they're about to be cut off.
Yes, they're stockpiling nicotine because they have to go without it for the next 4 hours. They are waiting to be slid into a massive 32-ton, $4 million fMRI scanner.
It's a wild scene.
It really is. And the goal of this whole incredible undertaking is to finally reveal the naked, uncensored truth about human cravings.
And that scene, it cuts right to the heart of something so fundamental about human nature.
Which is what?
Well, our conscious minds, like the parts of us that talk, the parts that fill out surveys and try to sound responsible, they're very often completely disconnected from our subconscious desires.
We think we know why we do things.
We really do. We think we're in control. But that disconnect between what we tell the world and what our brains actually crave, it's costing businesses and governments billions upon billions of dollars every single year.
So today, we are taking a deep dive into the largest neuromarketing study ever conducted. We're going to uncover the hidden biological forces that actually drive our buying behavior.
It's a fascinating journey.
It really is. For anyone listening who is interested in business, entrepreneurship, or even just simply understanding your own daily habits, you are about to learn why traditional market research is fundamentally broken.
Completely broken.
Yeah. We're going to explore how peering directly into the human brain is just completely rewriting the rules of what sells, what fails, and ultimately what makes us tick.
To really appreciate the magnitude of what that $4 million machine revealed, I think we have to first understand the sheer scale of the failure of the conscious consumer.
Right. The traditional way we've always done things.
Exactly. For decades, the entire global economy has basically relied on a premise that turns out to be totally false.
The idea that if you want to know what a consumer wants, you should just ask them.
Just ask them. Put them in a room and ask.
The classic focus group. And when we say this method is a failure, we are talking about a scale that is almost hard to wrap your head around.
The numbers are brutal.
They really are. 8 out of every 10 new products launched in the United States fail within their first 3 months.
8 out of 10.
It's staggering. That means 80% of the time, millions of dollars in research, development, and marketing simply evaporate.
Gone.
Yeah. And if you look globally, it can actually be even worse. In Japan, product launches fail a staggering 9.7 times out of 10.
Wow. Almost all of them.
Almost all of them. Just think about the boardroom meetings, the late nights, the endless spreadsheets, all leading to products that just vanish from the shelves.
The numbers are absolutely staggering, and they point to a systemic flaw in how we gather data.
So give us an example. What does this actually look like in the real world?
Let's look at a hypothetical but incredibly realistic scenario drawn from the research.
Yeah.
Imagine a product we'll call Pure Al.
Curel. Okay.
Yeah, it's an antibacterial hand gel. The market researchers want to know if it will sell, so they bring in their target demographic, today's modern mother.
Okay. So they get a group of moms in a room with a two-way mirror. These women are stressed. They're, riding the subway. They're watching their kids climb all over bacteria-laden jungle gyms at the park.
Right, they're deep in the trenches of parenting.
Exactly. So the researcher asks, are you worried about germs? And of course, the mother tells the focus group she is absolutely terrified of germs.
She wants her family safe.
Naturally.
Yeah.
So the company listens. They spend millions developing, bottling, and marketing a pocket-sized germ killer based entirely on what these women explicitly said they wanted. And then it completely flops.
Nobody buys it.
Nobody buys it. Why?
Well, it flops because traditional focus groups are just inherently flawed environments. The core issue here is that human beings desperately want to view themselves as highly rational actors.
They want to look smart.
Exactly. We want to believe we make logical choices based on utility, safety, facts. But in reality, about 85% of the time, our brains are operating entirely on autopilot.
85%? That's
Yeah.
huge.
It is. We are driven by subconscious processing. So when you put a consumer in a focus group, their answers are instantly skewed by tiny, imperceptible micro-emotions that they aren't even aware of.
It's kind of like asking someone to describe a dream they had 3 weeks ago.
That's a great way to put it.
You're going to get a story, sure.
Yeah.
But it's heavily filtered, it's reconstructed, pieced together to make narrative sense. It's probably not the objective truth of what actually happened in their head.
I love that analogy. It perfectly captures the reconstructive nature of memory and justification.
Right.
In a focus group setting, that mother claiming she cares deeply about germs is reacting to the immediate social pressure of the room. She wants to project the image of a good, hyper-vigilant parent.
Oh, for sure. She doesn't want to look bad in front of the other moms.
Exactly. She certainly doesn't want to admit to a room full of strangers with clipboards that her house is actually a mess, or that she frequently forgets to wash her kids' hands.
Or, maybe she just wants to give the researcher the answer she thinks they want to hear so she can collect her $50 gift card and go home.
That happens constantly. Or, on a completely subconscious level, she might just dislike the shape of the researcher's nose.
Wait, really? Something that trivial?
Yes. Or the room is slightly too cold. Or she's distracted by a frustrating email she got right before walking in. All of those invisible factors taint her verbal feedback.
That's wild.
Stress, modern life, and these deeply embedded subconscious biases make us highly irrational actors, even when we are trying our absolute hardest to be completely honest. The conscious mind is just a very unreliable narrator.
Which honestly perfectly explains that famous quote from the department store pioneer John Wanamaker.
Oh, the advertising quote.
Yeah, over a century ago, he said, "Half my advertising budget is wasted. Trouble is, I don't know which half."
It's brilliant and so true.
It's amazing that 100 years later, companies are still struggling with this exact same thing. Fast forward to today, and companies are spending roughly $117 billion annually on marketing in America alone.
Just an astronomical amount of money.
And just in the year 2005, there were 156,000 new products launched globally. If you do the math, that is a new product dropping every 3 minutes.
And most of them will fail.
Right. The vast majority of them are destined for the graveyard, all because they relied on what people said.
Precisely.
So for you listening right now, the practical takeaway here, especially if you are an entrepreneur or building a business or even just trying to persuade people in your daily life, is this. Do not rely purely on what people say they want in a survey or a conversation.
You can't trust the verbal feedback alone.
You really can't. You have to observe their actual behavior, or you have to dig much deeper into their unspoken emotional drivers.
Yes, but observing behavior also has its limits.
Does.
Well, watching someone walk past the Pure Al gel in the supermarket tells you what happened. They didn't buy it. But it still doesn't tell you why it happened.
Ah, I see.
To solve the why, science eventually had to find a way to bypass the mouth entirely. If the conscious mind is an unreliable narrator, the only solution is to interview the brain directly.
Okay, let's unpack this. This is where we go back to that Rainy Clinic in London.
Right.
And the fMRI, the functional magnetic resonance imaging machine.
The truth machine.
Exactly. Now, I want to make sure we really understand what this machine is doing, because it isn't just a fancy X-ray taking a snapshot of your skull, right?
Not at all. An fMRI is tracking oxygenated blood in the brain in real time. It operates on a principle called the Boldy signal blood oxygen level dependent imaging.
So if I'm thinking really hard about a math problem or, I don't know, craving a donut, how does the machine actually see that? Is it literally looking at redness in the brain?
No, it's actually about magnetism.
Magnetism. Okay.
Yeah, when a specific part of your brain starts working hard, those neurons need more fuel, specifically oxygen and glucose.
Right. They need energy.
Exactly. So the body responds by rushing oxygen-rich blood to that exact area. Now, hemoglobin, the protein in your blood that carries oxygen, has different magnetic properties depending on whether it's carrying oxygen or not.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
It's brilliant physics. The giant 32-ton magnet in the fMRI detects those magnetic differences. It can pinpoint exactly where the blood is rushing, down to a single millimeter.
Down to a millimeter. That's incredibly precise.
It essentially provides a live 3D heat map of your thoughts, emotions, and desires as they happen.
That is just wild. It's literally watching the fuel lines of the brain light up.
That's exactly what it's doing.
And the scope of this smoking study we're diving into is just mind-blowing. The researchers didn't just scan a dozen college kids in a basement lab.
No, they went massive.
They scanned 2,081 volunteers across 5 different countries.
Yeah.
This massive undertaking cost $7 million and took 3 years to complete.
It was an unprecedented, monumental undertaking. Before this, neuromarketing was a very niche, almost experimental field.
Kind of fringe science.
Exactly. But this study legitimized it, and the results completely shattered everything the global medical community thought they knew about public health campaigns.
So take us into the data. What did they find?
Let's look closely at the specific case of a volunteer from the UK named Marlene. She was a self-described party smoker.
Right, the kind of person who says they only smoke when they have a drink in their hand.
Exactly. On her pre-test questionnaire, Marlene was asked a very straightforward question. Do the graphic, terrifying warning labels on cigarette packs affect your smoking habits?
And what did she say?
She checked, yes. She wrote that she actually smoked less because of them.
Okay, so on paper, the health warnings were doing their job perfectly. They were scaring her into healthier behavior.
Right. But then she put on the earplugs to block out the massive humming noise of the magnet, and she went inside the machine.
Right, she's lying in this claustrophobic, incredibly noisy $4 million truth machine. She has a mirror angled over her eyes so she can see a screen projecting images.
Setting the stage perfectly.
And the researchers start flashing a series of these gruesome cigarette warning labels onto the screen. The exact ones you see in Europe, showing gangrenous feet, open heart surgeries, massive lung tumors.
Very difficult images to look at.
Yeah. And the lead researcher, Dr. Gemma Calvert, is sitting in the control room watching Marlene's brain scans render in real time. Now, on the survey in the waiting room, Marlene said the labels worked. But inside the machine, Dr. Calvert discovered something astonishing.
Truly astonishing.
The labels had absolutely zero deterrent effect, none.
Zero. The parts of the brain associated with fear, alarm, or behavioral inhibition were completely quiet.
Wait, I want to pause here. Are you saying these multi-million-dollar government health campaigns, the graphic images meticulously designed by health experts to save lives, they are just totally ignored by the brain, like they don't even register?
No, I'm saying they aren't ignored at all. They register very powerfully. But they actually completely backfire.
Backfire? How?
When Dr. Calvert analyzed the fMRI data across the thousands of participants, she found that these terrifying warning labels were actually stimulating a very specific, deeply buried region of the smoker's brains. It's called the nucleus accumbens.
The craving spot.
Yes. The nucleus accumbens is a cluster of specialized neurons deep in the basal ganglia. From an evolutionary perspective, it is our anticipation engine.
Anticipation engine, I like that.
It's the area that lights up when the body desperately desires something and expects a reward. It is the exact same area that activates when a person craves alcohol, hard drugs, sex, or gambling.
So it's heavily tied to addiction.
Absolutely. It relies heavily on dopamine. And here's the insidious part. When the nucleus accumbens is repeatedly stimulated over time, it demands higher and higher doses of whatever is causing the dopamine release to get its fix.
So, let me get this straight. When the smokers looked at the blackened lungs and the stark warnings of emphysema, it didn't trigger the fear centers of their brains to make them want to quit smoking.
No, it didn't.
It triggered their nucleus accumbens. The terrifying labels were literally making them crave a cigarette.
Yeah, it is the biological reality the fMRI revealed. The very tool governments use to fight the smoking epidemic had inadvertently become a killer marketing tool for big tobacco.
Right.
The warnings literally became a trigger, and this explains the disconnect with Marlene. She wasn't necessarily lying on her survey in a malicious way.
Right, she probably believed what she was writing.
Exactly. Her conscious mind felt the cultural guilt of smoking. It knew smoking was bad, which is why her rational brain instructed her hand to check yes on the paper survey.
Makes sense.
But her subconscious mind, the ultimate no bullshit zone, saw the label, bypassed all logic, and just screamed for a fix.
It's staggering. It's like the brain sees the warning label and translates it entirely differently. The conscious mind reads, danger, lung cancer, but the subconscious mind just sees, oh, this is a box of cigarettes. I love cigarettes. Let's get one.
That is a very accurate way to frame it. The association with the product was stronger than the fear of the consequence.
The brand identity essentially hijacked the fear.
Yes, the neurological hardware just saw a cue to light up,
Yeah.
and you really have to look at the global context to understand the weight of this biological hijacking.
Give us some scale here.
In Europe, they use these incredibly thick, black, inescapable boxes for warnings that cover half the pack. In Portugal, the packs bluntly say, Fumo Armada, smoking kills. It's impossible to ignore.
Right, it's right in your face.
Yet globally, 15 billion cigarettes are sold every single day.
15 billion a day.
A day. In China alone, there are 300 million smokers. And the cultural narratives there are fascinating and deeply entrenched.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah, many have been led to believe that smoking actually cures Parkinson's disease or that it improves cognitive function. And you better believe the tobacco companies are fully aware of our biological drivers, even without an fMRI machine.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
They might not have known the exact name of the nucleus accumbens 50 years ago, but they knew how behavior worked.
They've always been masters of observation.
Look at Philip Morris launching Marlboro Intense. It's a smaller, high-tar cigarette specifically designed to be consumed in just 7 puffs.
Right, and why 7 puffs?
Because they were adapting to modern workplace bans. You can't smoke at your desk anymore. You have to ride the elevator down 30 floors and stand in the freezing rain.
It's an inconvenience.
Huge inconvenience. So Marlboro Intense was engineered perfectly for those quick, highly stressful smoke breaks. They deliver a massive hit of nicotine incredibly fast. They're catering directly to that craving center, providing maximum dopamine for minimum time.
So good intentions absolutely do not equal good results.
Right. And for you listening right now, the business takeaway here is massive. An intervention, an advertisement, or a product feature can trigger the exact opposite of its intended effect if it inadvertently stimulates the wrong psychological trigger.
You really have to test the subconscious reaction.
Exactly. You might think your bold, aggressive warning label is saying danger, but the brain's anticipation engine is translating it as reward.
And that leads to a much broader realization about how we make decisions. The biological tug of war in our heads heavily favors the subconscious,
It really does.
which leads us perfectly into a different kind of override. If the brain's craving center can overpower stark, graphic warnings of death, how does it handle something less life-threatening, but deeply ingrained?
Like what?
How does the brain handle the choice between 2 nearly identical products, like 2 different brands of soda?
Okay, so we've seen how a craving can bypass logic. But what happens when you pit biology directly against brand loyalty? Let's talk about the ultimate marketing rivalry of the 20th century. Coke versus Pepsi.
A classic.
To understand this, we have to go back to 1975, to the famous Pepsi Challenge. I'm sure many listeners remember this or have at least seen the commercials.
Oh, they were everywhere.
Pepsi representatives set up tables in shopping malls all over the world, pulling random shoppers aside to do blind sip tests.
It was a brilliant, highly disruptive marketing campaign.
It really was. People drank from 2 unmarked cups, 1 Coke, 1 Pepsi. And the results were a huge, highly publicized win for Pepsi. More than half the people preferred the taste of Pepsi when they didn't know what they were drinking.
Which sent shockwaves through the industry.
Malcolm Gladwell actually talked about this extensively in his book Blink. He theorized that in a quick sip test, human beings naturally prefer the sweeter product.
Makes sense.
And Pepsi has a slightly sweeter, more citrus-forward flavor profile compared to Coke's raisiny vanilla notes.
Right, so Pepsi wins the single sip.
Exactly. But Gladwell pointed out that nobody actually sits down and drinks just one single sip. When you drink a whole 12-ounce can, the extreme sweetness of Pepsi can become cloying and overpowering, which is why Coke, with its smoother finish, still dominated the global market in actual sales.
Gladwell's theory made perfect logical sense at the time. It was a great explanation for the discrepancy between the blind taste tests and actual market share.
It felt very neatly wrapped up.
It did. But in 2003, a neuroscientist named Dr. Reed Montague decided to test that theory. He wanted to run the Pepsi challenge again, but this time he wanted to do it while peering directly into the brain.
Okay, so Dr. Montague basically decides to recreate this exact same mall test, but while the person is trapped inside a humming MRI machine.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. How do you even drink soda inside a brain scanner without moving your head and ruining the image?
It's a great logistical question. They actually rigged up a computerized pump system.
Like little tubes.
Yes. It delivered perfectly timed squirts of either Coke or Pepsi directly onto the subject's tongues through a plastic tube while they lay perfectly still inside the scanner.
That is hilarious, but incredibly effective.
Very effective. So Dr. Montague set up the study in two distinct stages. In stage one, it was a pure blind taste test, just like the mall in 1975. The machine pumped a squirt of soda, and the subjects didn't know which brand it was.
And what did the brain do?
When the volunteers took a sip of Pepsi, a region of the brain called the ventral putamen lit up brightly on the scans.
Okay, what is the ventral putamen doing in this context?
The ventral putamen is a critical part of the brain's reward system, specifically stimulated by appealing tastes and rewarding stimuli.
Ah, so it's all about the physical pleasure of the taste.
Exactly. From an evolutionary standpoint, early hominids needed a fast-acting reward system to survive. If you are foraging in the woods and you find a berry that is safe, sweet, and calorie-dense, your ventral putamen lights up to tell you, this is excellent energy, remember this, eat more of it.
Basic survival wiring.
Yes. So when the sweeter Pepsi hit the tongue, it was hacking an ancient survival mechanism built for foraging. Neurologically speaking, the subjects genuinely, biologically preferred the taste of Pepsi.
So the brain scan validated the 1975 mall tests perfectly.
Perfectly.
But then comes stage two. And this is where the history of marketing gets completely rewritten.
Yes. In stage two, Dr. Montague completely changed the parameters. Before pumping the soda into the subject's mouth, he flashed a visual cue on the screen.
Like a logo.
Yes, either the iconic red Coca-Cola logo or
Yeah.
the red, white, and blue Pepsi globe. He told the volunteers what they were about to drink before they tasted it.
And suddenly, the results flipped entirely.
Entirely.
When the subjects knew what the brands were, 75% of the respondents claimed to prefer Coke. But they didn't just change their minds verbally, right?
No, the fMRI showed something incredible. The blood flow in the brain actually changed location.
Wow.
This is the critical finding. Instead of just the ventral putamen lighting up in response to the sweet taste, suddenly the medial prefrontal cortex engaged.
The medial prefrontal cortex. What's the function of that area?
It is a highly evolved part of the brain responsible for higher thinking, discernment, and most importantly, our sense of identity and self-referential thought.
It's who we are.
Exactly. It's the part of the brain that integrates our memories with our sense of who we are. What Dr. Montague was observing was a literal biological tug-of-war playing out in real time.
On one side, you have the ancient survival-driven preference for the sweet taste of Pepsi happening in the ventral putamen.
Right.
On the other side, the medial prefrontal cortex engages, and suddenly, all the emotional history associated with Coca-Cola comes flooding into the brain's processing center.
Think about what Coca-Cola represents. It's not just a beverage. It's decades of masterful marketing.
Oh, absolutely. It's the iconic red can. It's the classic script logo. It's the childhood memories of drinking it at a summer barbecue.
The polar bears at Christmas.
Yes. Or the I'd like to buy the world a Cokes commercial.
And all of that encoded emotional value, all those memories and associations built up over a lifetime, rose up like mutinous soldiers inside the brain.
I love that phrase, mutinous soldiers.
It's exactly what happened. They completely overpowered the rational biological taste preference. The emotion won. The brand beat the flavor. The medial prefrontal cortex essentially shouted down the ventral putamen.
Forbes magazine was actually so blown away by this that they ran a massive cover story on it called In Search of the Buy Button.
It was a huge deal.
And this fMRI study, along with others using a different technology called SST.
Steady state typography.
Right. It looks like one of those tight 1920s swimming caps, but covered in electrodes to measure rapid brain waves in real time. These studies proved a massive point for modern business.
A hugely important point.
A functionally superior product will routinely, predictably, lose to an emotionally superior brand. When you are building a business, You aren't just selling a taste or a software feature or a service. You are selling the encoded emotional value.
You're selling the feeling.
Exactly. Coke didn't win the market because of corn syrup and carbonation ratios. They won because of how their brand made the medial prefrontal cortex feel.
Which is a profound lesson in brand equity. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it raises an important question.
Which is?
Well, we've seen how brands like Coke build that emotional override slowly over decades of consistent, relentless advertising. But what happens if you don't have decades?
Like a startup.
Right. What if a company needs to hack your brain the second you look at a billboard or walk onto a dealership lot? Is there a biological shortcut? How do advertisers bypass logic not over years, but in milliseconds?
To answer that, we have to look at primal triggers.
My favorite topic.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Daimler-Chrysler Mini Cooper study. When you look at the glossy brochures or the marketing copy for a Mini Cooper, they talk about the engineering, right?
Oh, of course.
They highlight the ultra-rigid body, the alloy engine, the advanced side airbags. They're pitching safety, efficiency, and performance.
All very logical, rational selling points.
But when researchers put people in an fMRI and showed them a picture of a Mini Cooper, the brain didn't light up in areas associated with logic, safety assessment, or spatial reasoning.
Not at all. The area that lit up was a very discrete region in the back of the brain that specifically responds to faces.
Faces. They're looking at a car made of metal and glass, and their brain says, oh, look at that face.
It's a phenomenon called pareidolia, where the brain is so highly tuned to look for human faces that it finds them in inanimate objects.
Like seeing a face in a cloud or the man in the moon.
Exactly. In the case of the Mini Cooper, the car's wide, low stance, the specific curve of the grille, and those large round headlights registered in the human brain instantly as an adorable face.
It was basically Bambi on four wheels.
Yeah.
People love the car because their brains instantly anthropomorphized it into a cute little face you just want to pinch.
And this isn't just an accident of design. It taps into deep evolutionary survival mechanisms. We are hardwired to respond to faces, particularly infant faces.
So there's real science behind cute.
Oh, deep science. A neuroscientist named Morton L. Kringleback conducted a fascinating study where he showed volunteers pictures of infant faces while scanning their brains.
And what did he find?
He found that within just 1/7 of a second, literally a fraction of an eye, blink, a massive spike in activity occurred in the medial orbitofrontal cortex.
The medial orbitofrontal cortex. Where's that located and what does it do?
It's an area right above the eye sockets, and it is heavily linked to detecting rewarding stimuli and driving maternal or paternal affection.
So it's the caretaking center.
Yes. Our brains are biologically mandated to protect, nurture, and find immense joy in baby faces. If early humans didn't find their helpless, screaming infants incredibly cute, they might have abandoned them, and our species would have died out.
That's a dark thought, but biologically true.
It is. So we have this incredibly fast, hardwired circuit to feel warmth and protective instincts when we see big eyes and round features. When a car designer subtly taps into that exact same neurological circuit, they are bypassing the logical evaluation of the alloy engine and plugging directly into primal evolutionary wiring.
You don't buy the car because it's safe. You buy it because your brain wants to adopt it.
Exactly.
That is just incredible. And it brings us to another massive primal trigger that constantly overrides our logic, the demand for instant gratification.
Oh, this is a big one.
There was a fascinating study done by psychologists at Princeton University using Amazon gift cards. They offered students a very simple choice. You can have a $15 gift card right now, today, handed to you on your way out the door. Or, if you can just wait 2 weeks, you could have a $20 gift card.
Logically, the math is completely undefeated. Getting $5 extra for doing absolutely nothing but waiting 14 days is a phenomenal return on investment.
Any economist would tell you to wait.
But as we've established today, human beings are not simple math equations. We are deeply conflicted biological machines. The fMRI scans of these students making the decision revealed an incredible conflict happening in real time inside their skulls.
What did the scans show? Let's break it down.
The prospect of the delayed $20, the logical, better deal activated the lateral prefrontal cortex. This is a region involved in rational planning, calculating future outcomes, and generating emotion based on logic and math.
So that's the adult in the room.
Exactly. The mature planner.
But the prospect of getting $15 right now caused a completely different reaction, right?
A massive flurry of stimulation occurred in the limbic system.
The limbic system being the ancient mammalian emotional core of the brain.
Exactly. The limbic system is responsible for our most raw, visceral, emotional life. It doesn't care about tomorrow. It only cares about right now.
It wants what it wants immediately.
Yes. The emotional thrill, the immediate dopamine rush of getting the reward today, physically overpowered the rational knowledge in the prefrontal cortex that the delayed reward was a better deal.
So the emotions just won?
They did. The students took the $15.
It's kind of like when I set an alarm for 6 a.m. to go to the gym.
Oh, perfect analogy.
Right. The night before, my rational lateral prefrontal cortex sets the alarm because it wants health, longevity, a good workout. It calculates the future benefit. But at 6 a.m., when the alarm goes off, my limbic system takes over and just smashes the snooze button because it wants the immediate reward of a warm blanket now.
The limbic system wants comfort immediately.
My brain is literally fighting itself, and the limbic system usually throws the knockout punch. When the reward is immediate, our evolutionary wiring heavily discounts the future.
That is a perfect everyday example of temporal discounting. We are constantly fighting this battle between our rational prefrontal cortex and our emotional limbic system.
So we have the instinct to protect cute faces and the deep desire for instant gratification, both successfully overriding logic. But there is one primal trigger that is arguably the most powerful, the most ancient of all.
Fear.
And that is fear. Now, before we dive into this next study, I want to frame this very carefully for everyone listening.
Yes, important disclaimer.
We are looking strictly at the biology of the brain here. The researchers we're about to discuss tested political campaign ads from both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. Our focus today is entirely on the neuroscience of how the human brain processes these specific images, completely separate from any political endorsements, leanings, or judgments.
Absolutely. We are just looking at the neurobiology of voters.
Period. Okay, so what is this biological landscape?
It is a fascinating one. The study in question was conducted by a firm called FKF Applied Research, led by Tom Friedman. They were investigating how the brain responds to high-stakes political advertising, specifically leading up to the 2004 U.S. presidential election between the incumbent George W. Bush and the challenger John Kerry.
So they put voters in brain scanners and showed them various campaign commercials.
Yes, including some of the most famous or infamous political ads in history.
Like the 1964 Daisy ad. For those who don't know, this was an ad run by Lyndon B. Johnson's campaign. It featured a little girl peacefully picking petals off a daisy in a field, and then suddenly a terrifying countdown begins, followed by the reflection of a massive nuclear mushroom cloud in her eye.
A deeply unsettling piece of media.
Very much so. They also showed these 2004 voters' imagery from the September 11th terrorist attacks, which was heavily utilized in campaign messaging at the time.
And the brain scans from FKF Applied Research showed exactly why these types of highly emotional, fear-based ads are produced year after year, election after election.
What did they see?
When the voters, regardless of their background, saw the 9/11 imagery in the Daisy ad, the scans showed an across-the-board massive spike in activity in the amygdala.
The amygdala is that tiny almond-shaped center deep in the brain, right?
Yes, situated right near the hippocampus. The amygdala acts as our brain's biological alarm system. It is the center that governs fear, anxiety, dread, and the fight-or-flight response.
It's the survival trigger.
Exactly. When you see a snake in the grass, your amygdala fires long before your conscious brain even registers the word snake.
So these ads were bypassing policy debates completely and just ringing the biological fire alarm.
Powerfully. But what was uniquely fascinating about this specific 2004 study was the divergence in the data based on the political affiliation of the subjects.
Oh, this is the really interesting part.
Yeah. The researchers observed that the amygdalas of the self-identified Democrats in the study actually lit up noticeably more than the Republicans when viewing the 9/11 imagery.
The fear response was biologically heightened in one group over the other.
Yes. The scientific observation was a heightened state of alarm. Now, the researchers theorized a few reasons for this. It could have been due to a deeper underlying anxiety among Democrats about the use of military force, or perhaps the anxiety that this specific, powerful imagery would successfully lead to the incumbent president's re-election.
But regardless of how you interpret the psychology, the biological fact remained undeniable.
Right. The ads were successfully targeting and activating the brain's fear center. Policy papers and logical debate were secondary to primal dread.
And fear works. It commands attention because ignoring fear in the wild usually meant getting eaten.
Exactly.
And this isn't just in politics. Whether you are looking at the emerging field of neuroeconomics, where researchers like Andrew Lowen and George Lowenstein are proving with brain scans that our most critical financial decisions.
Like when to sell a stock in a panic.
Right. Driven entirely by emotion rather than logical market analysis. Or you look at Hollywood, where a researcher named Steve Quartz is hooking people up to brain scanners to test movie trailers,
Yeah.
tracking exactly which explosions or jump scares trigger the best dopamine response. The baseline is always the same.
There's even a company actively pushing something called the no-lie MRI.
Oh, I read about this. How does a brain scanner act as a lie detector?
It operates on a very simple biological fact.
Yeah.
Telling the truth is our brain's default state. It requires very little energy to just state a memory.
It's just recalling data.
Right. But lying actually takes measurable cognitive effort. You have to suppress the truth, construct a falsehood, and monitor your behavior to ensure you are believed.
That's a lot of processing power.
It is. That extra cognitive workload requires more oxygenated blood to be sent to the prefrontal cortex. The fMRI can see that extra blood flow, theoretically spotting a lie as it's being constructed.
It all comes back to the blood and the biology. The overarching theme across all these disciplines, from selling hand sanitizer to cigarettes to cars to political candidates, is that appealing to deep evolutionary wiring will always outcompete a list of logical bullet points.
Every single time.
Whether you are trying to sell a Mini Cooper, get a candidate elected, or market a financial service, if you can tap into the ancient instinct to protect a baby's face, the desperate mammalian urge for instant gratification, or the primal, heart-pounding response of the amygdala to fear, you don't need to win the logical argument. You've already won the biological one.
It shifts the entire paradigm of persuasion from rhetoric to neuroscience.
So what does this all mean for us? We've gone on this incredible journey today.
We really have covered a lot of ground.
We started with smokers whose anticipation engines secretly craved the very cigarettes that the graphic warning labels explicitly told them would kill them.
Which is still so crazy to think about.
We looked at Pepsi lovers who biologically preferred one taste, but lied to themselves because the encoded emotional history of Coca-Cola physically overpowered their taste buds.
The mutinous soldiers.
Yes, we saw how a car can trigger the baby face protective response, how a gift card can cause our limbic system to hijack our rational planning, and how voters are driven to the polls by the fear centers of their amygdalas.
If we synthesize all these diverse scientific studies into a single unified theory of modern commerce and human behavior, it leads to a profound, almost uncomfortable realization.
Uncomfortable is definitely the word.
The grand illusion of the human experience is that we are the rational captains of our own ships. We firmly believe we weigh the pros and cons, assess the data, read the ingredients, and make logical, independent choices.
But the fMRI proves that's a story we tell ourselves.
Yes. In reality, our conscious mind acts much more like a frantic PR agent.
A PR agent.
Yeah. The actual decisions are made by our subconscious emotional brains, the CEO, in mere milliseconds, based on primal triggers, evolutionary survival mechanisms, and deeply encoded memories.
Okay, so the subconscious is the CEO calling the shots.
Exactly. Then, after the decision is already biologically made, our conscious mind, the PR agent, rushes to a microphone to spin a logical, rational-sounding justification for a choice it actually had very little part in making.
It's the PR agent sweating at the podium, desperately trying to make the CEO, the limbic system, look like a calm, calculated, rational thinker, when in reality the CEO just smashed the buy button because they saw a cute face or felt a sudden spike of fear.
That is exactly what happens, and this raises an important question that everyone has to grapple with. If our purchasing decisions, our brand loyalties, and even our political inclinations are so heavily dictated by subconscious biology that we can't even perceive, how much agency do we actually have when we swipe our credit cards or cast our ballots?
It's a question that really forces you to look in the mirror. If our highly evolved brains are this easily manipulated by a cute metallic face on a car grill, a red soda can, or a 2-week delay on a gift card, are we essentially just biological algorithms waiting for the right input to trigger a highly predictable output?
It's something to think about.
It really is. And when you look around your house, in your closet, your garage, your pantry, you have to wonder, how much of your own identity, your own unique taste, is actually just carefully curated neuromarketing that slipped right past your PR agent?
Makes you look at your kitchen cabinets a little differently.
Absolutely does. Now that we know the brain's hidden buy button exists, and we know exactly how vulnerable our evolutionary wiring is to these primal triggers, what happens when advertisers decide to stop using traditional commercials entirely?
Scary thought.
What happens when they start sneaking those subconscious triggers directly into the plot lines of our favorite TV shows, bypassing our defenses completely? Join us next time as we dive into the billion-dollar illusion of product placement. What if I told you that a major, like, global corporation spent a staggering $26 million to put their product on the absolute biggest television show in the world? And the only thing they accomplished was making the audience completely, utterly forget their brand.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that number, honestly.
Right, and we are not talking about a hypothetical scenario here. This isn't something cooked up in a business school seminar.
No, not at all.
We are not talking about a rounding error on a corporate spreadsheet either. This is a real-world, multi-million-dollar mistake. It's a colossal failure of strategy that played out in front of tens of millions of viewers.
It's a staggering failure. And the craziest part is that it wasn't a creative failure. It was actually a biological one.
A biological failure. That is so fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're looking at a specific set of brain scans that entirely rewrote the rules of how human memory works.
Oh, wow.
We're going to see why most of the advertisements you and I see every single day are literally invisible to our brains.
Invisible.
Yeah. We are going to explore why mere exposure is just dead, and why integrating your brand into a compelling narrative is the absolute key to survival for anyone interested in business, marketing, or, entrepreneurship today.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the stakes here are absolutely massive for you listening right now.
They really are.
Whether you are a curious beginner just starting to think about how human behavior works, or you are a seasoned marketer trying to figure out why your recent ad campaigns are just falling flat.
Right, exactly.
This deep dive is for you. We are going to take a journey that respects the profound depth of the neuroscience here. We're talking real brain science.
But without getting bogged down in all the academic jargon.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
We are going to get straight to the insights you can actually use. So, to really understand this multi-million-dollar disaster, we first have to look at the underlying crisis of traditional advertising.
Yeah, we have to look at why the old rules suddenly just stopped working.
Right. And to do that, I want to talk about car commercials.
Oh, this is the perfect place to start. The source material details a very specific, incredibly revealing experiment that illustrates this crisis perfectly.
Yeah, I love this part.
We could call this phenomenon advertising amnesia. So, the researchers decided to compile 60 different television commercials for cars.
60 different ads. That's a lot of ads.
It is. And now these aren't obscure regional brands. These are massive global campaigns from 20 different top-tier automotive companies.
Right. We are talking about Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Audi, Subaru,
Yeah.
the heavy hitters.
Exactly. And these were commercials that had been running on television consistently over a 2-year period.
Right. So these are brands spending billions collectively. They're employing the absolute top advertising agencies in the world.
And if you sit down and watch this montage of 60 commercials back to back, you start to notice something really bizarre.
Yeah, you are essentially watching the exact identical scene play out over and over again.
Over and over.
It is almost always a shiny, seemingly driverless car gunning its way around a hairpin turn, usually in some barren, majestic desert landscape.
Always the desert.
Always the desert. And right at the apex of the turn, the tires slide, and it sends up this dramatic little cloud of dust.
Poof.
Poof, over and over. Swerve, turn, desert, dust cloud.
It's just wild.
When you watch a montage like that, it becomes entirely impossible to tell one brand from another. I mean, a Subaru looks like an Audi, which looks like a Nissan.
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of why this blur happened.
Right, the brain science.
Exactly. It isn't just that the commercials are creatively similar. It's about how your brain handles cognitive overload.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, we live in an era of a fast-moving, always-on media assault. Think about your average day.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. You are constantly bombarded by the internet, 24-hour news cycles, group texts, podcasts, billboards on your commute.
Pop-up ads, sponsored posts on your social feeds. It never stops.
Never. So because of this endless, aggressive stream of information, our brains have been forced to evolve a remarkably thick, highly aggressive self-protective filter.
Because if we actually processed every single piece of data hitting our retinas, our brains would basically overheat, right?
Exactly. We simply do not have the metabolic or cognitive capacity to process, evaluate, and store every single piece of commercial messaging we see.
It's just too much data.
Way too much. The brain is an energy-hogging organ, and it desperately needs to conserve fuel. So it develops heuristics, shortcuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it recognizes a pattern it has seen 100 times before, it just flags it.
So it's less like an industrial dump and more like your email's automatic spam folder.
That's a perfect analogy.
Like the second your brain registers car on a desert road, it reads the metadata, realizes there is zero new vital information contained in this visual, and routes it straight to the spam folder.
Before your conscious mind even has a chance to open the email.
Wow.
That is a much more accurate way to look at it. It bypasses conscious processing entirely.
So you don't even really see it.
Nope. The brain recognizes the pattern, categorizes it as irrelevant commercial noise, and deletes it from short-term memory to save processing power.
Processing power for, like, information that actually matters to your survival or your emotional well-being.
Right. Uncreative companies, simply imitating other uncreative companies, create a phenomenon we can call wallpaper.
Wallpaper. I like that.
It just blends into the background of our lives. It becomes invisible. The brain only records what is distinctly original, what breaks the pattern, or what is deeply emotionally engaging.
But wait, I want to look at this from the perspective of traditional marketing theory for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Surely repetition works. I mean, the rule of 7 has been taught in business schools for decades.
Oh yeah, the classic rule of 7.
Right, the idea that a consumer needs to see a message 7 times before they take action. So if they show us that desert scene day after day, week after week during Sunday football, doesn't it eventually stick?
You would think so, right?
Yeah. Doesn't the sheer brute force of repetition force its way through that spam filter?
Well, that is the core assumption the advertising industry relied upon for the better part of a century.
Okay.
And, to be fair, in an era with only 3 television channels and no internet, brute force repetition had some efficacy, simply because the total volume of daily information was so much lower.
That makes sense. Less noise overall.
Exactly. But the modern neuroscience tells a very different story. Repetition of wallpaper just makes it thicker wallpaper.
Thicker wallpaper.
Yeah, it doesn't magically turn it into a masterpiece.
So you're saying if the initial stimulus is boring or irrelevant, repeating it 500 times doesn't suddenly make my brain care?
It actually does the exact opposite. It trains your brain to ignore it more efficiently.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. If the initial stimulus lacks originality or emotional resonance, repeating it reinforces the brain's habit of filtering it out.
So you're building a stronger filter.
Yes. The neural pathways associated with ignoring that specific stimulus become stronger.
That is wild.
Once your brain learns that a specific visual cue carries no valuable or novel information, it actively tunes it out faster the next time.
Okay, so the practical takeaway for you listening right now is incredibly stark.
It really is.
If your business is just mimicking the competition, whether that's your website design, your sales pitch, or your social media strategy, you are not just wasting your resources.
No, you're doing something much worse.
You are actively training your customers to ignore you. You have to break the two-dimensional barrier of imitation. You have to give the brain a biological reason to let you pass the filter.
And when you scale that realization up to the level of global corporations, you can see why the advertising industry started panicking.
Yeah, I bet.
If traditional commercials, like the standard 30-second spots during commercial breaks, are literally becoming invisible to the human brain, businesses naturally have to look for sneakier ways to be seen.
More integrated ways.
Exactly. They need a way to bypass the filter entirely.
Which leads us directly to the explosion of the product placement industry.
Yes, it does.
Because instead of pausing the television show to show you an ad, which, as we just learned, signals to your brain that it's time to turn on the spam filter, they decided to just put the product inside the show itself.
Sneaky, but brilliant.
Right. And that brings us to the ultimate high-stakes test detailed in the source material. American Idol.
Oh, this is the big one.
We really need to set the scene here because
Right.
we aren't just talking about a popular show. In the mid-2000s, American Idol was the undisputed heavyweight champion of television.
It was a cultural juggernaut.
Seriously, it was pulling in over 30 million viewers a night. The stakes here were astronomically high.
The audience size was just unprecedented for reality television, which meant the cost of entry for brands was equally unprecedented.
Oh, I can only imagine.
You had 3 main sponsors stepping into the ring for this. Ford Motor Company, Singular Wireless, which many listeners might remember, eventually became AT&T.
Oh yeah, the little orange jack-o'-lantern looking guy.
Right, exactly. And the third sponsor was Coca-Cola. And each of these companies was reportedly paying an estimated $26 million annually just for the privilege of being featured on the show.
Just to be on the show. 26 million. It's hard to even wrap your head around that number.
It's massive.
Every single year, handing over a check of that size. But here's my question. When you are spending that kind of money, how do you even measure if it's working?
Well, that's the multi-million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, because you can't just look at a slight bump in sales and attribute it entirely to a TV show when you have 100 other marketing campaigns running globally.
You're right. You absolutely can't rely on basic sales data, and you certainly can't rely on Nielsen ratings or traditional focus groups.
Why not focus groups?
Focus groups are notoriously flawed. People often report what they think they should feel or what they think the researchers want to hear, or they simply can't articulate their subconscious reactions at all.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. You don't actually know what your brain is doing half the time.
Exactly. So to figure out if this massive investment was actually penetrating the viewers' minds, researchers needed hard, undeniable biological data. They needed to bypass the subject's opinions and look directly at their neurology.
And that is exactly what this groundbreaking study did.
Yes, it did.
They took 400 carefully chosen subjects and hooked them up to a highly advanced brain scanning technology.
400 people. That's a huge sample size for a brain study.
It is, and we should really name this technology because it's central to how we understand the results. It's called SST, which stands for steady state topography.
We really need to pause and explain why they used SST instead of something more familiar like an fMRI machine.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Because when most people think of a brain scan, they picture an fMRI. You know, that giant, loud magnetic tube you slide into at the hospital.
You have to lie perfectly still. And fMRI measures blood flow in the brain, right? It shows which areas are lighting up.
Exactly.
So why wasn't that good enough for watching American Idol?
Because of the speed of television.
The speed?
Yeah. An fMRI is fantastic for spatial resolution, meaning it tells you exactly where activity is happening in the brain, but it has terrible temporal resolution.
Temporal meaning time.
Right. It takes a few seconds for blood to rush to a specific part of your brain in response to a stimulus. Now, think about watching a fast-paced reality TV show.
The camera cuts like every 2 seconds.
Exactly. So by the time the blood flows to a part of your brain to show engagement with a specific shot, the scene has already changed 3 times.
Oh, I see.
You wouldn't know if the subject was reacting to the singer, the judge, or the Coke cup sitting in the background.
So an fMRI is just too slow. It's like trying to take a photograph of a race car with a really long exposure time. It just comes out as a complete blur.
That is a brilliant analogy. Precisely. SST, on the other hand, measures rapid brain waves, electrical potentials, basically in real time.
Real time?
Yes, it tracks electrical impulses millisecond by millisecond, and we need that extraordinary speed because the difference between noticing a brand's logo and completely ignoring it happens in a fraction of a second.
That's incredible. And I want you, the listener, to picture the setup of this experiment because the visual is just incredible.
It's very sci-fi.
It really is. You have these 400 ordinary people carefully selected to represent the target demographic, right? And they are brought into a testing facility. They're fitted with these black turban-like caps. And wired into these caps are a dozen electrodes that look almost like little tea candles resting on their heads.
Tea candles, yeah.
They look like members of some highly advanced, affable sci-fi cult or something out of a psychic fair. But they're just sitting there wearing these electrode caps, eating popcorn, watching an episode of American Idol.
It looks totally strange, but the data those electrodes pull is remarkably precise.
Okay.
The researchers were tracking several key metrics simultaneously as the subjects watched the show. First, they were tracking emotional engagement.
Meaning, like, do they care?
Right. Was the subject actually invested in what was happening on screen, or were they just zoning out? Second, they tracked approach and withdrawal responses.
What does that mean in neuroscience?
It tells us what visually attracts a person or repels them at a very primal level. Do they lean in or do they pull away neurologically?
Oh, that's fascinating.
And third, crucially, they were tracking memory encoding.
Memory encoding.
Yeah, they could literally see in real time what information was successfully penetrating the subject's long-term memory centers.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and this is a crucial step in the scientific method.
Oh, absolutely.
Before they even pressed play on the episode of American Idol, the researchers did something vital. They established a baseline.
Yes, the baseline is everything.
They didn't just want to know what the subjects remembered after the show.
Yeah.
They needed to know what was in their heads before the show even started.
Yeah, the pretest. They tested the subject's baseline memory and affinity for a wide variety of brands. And the results of that pretest were incredibly important.
What did they find?
Before the show, the subject showed absolutely no greater memory or preference for Ford, Singular, or Coke than they did for random non-sponsor brands in the exact same categories.
Wow. This means the race started on entirely even ground?
Entirely even.
Coke didn't have an inherent advantage just because, it's Coke. The subjects' brains weren't pre-primed to remember the sponsors over anything else.
That baseline is everything. It removes the variable of existing brand legacy.
Right.
It proves that whatever neurological changes happen over the next hour are strictly the result of the stimuli presented within that specific episode of American Idol. Nothing else.
Which gives you, the listener, an incredible practical takeaway right out of the gate.
For sure.
You cannot rely on your past brand legacy to guarantee current attention. It doesn't matter if you've been in business for 100 years.
Nope.
It doesn't matter if everyone in town knows your logo. Every single time you present your product to the market, whether in an email, a storefront, or a social post, you are starting from zero in the consumer's immediate conscious mind.
You have to earn it.
You have to earn their attention every single time.
Exactly. So, with the baseline established, the researchers let the subjects watch the program. The electrodes captured every microfluctuation in their brain waves, mapping exactly what engaged them and what they committed to memory.
Millisecond by millisecond.
Yep. And then we get the post-show results.
And this is where the colossal mistake is finally revealed.
Here we go.
After watching the program, the viewers had entirely forgotten the Ford products.
Entirely forgotten.
I really want to emphasize this. They hadn't just forgotten the specifics of the car model. The brand had failed to encode in their memory at all in relation to the viewing experience.
It's like it never happened.
Despite spending that massive 9-figure budget over the years, $26 million annually, Ford's placement in this context was a complete failure.
A total wash.
But meanwhile, Coca-Cola and Singular Wireless were highly memorable to the subjects. The data showed massive spikes in memory encoding for those two brands. Their investments paid off tremendously.
So now we have a genuine scientific mystery to solve.
Right.
They were all on the same show. They all had access to the exact same massive audience. Why did Coke and Singular succeed so spectacularly while Ford failed so miserably?
It's a huge question.
To answer that, we have to look past the money and look at the nature of the placements themselves. How were the products actually utilized within the broadcast?
Okay, let's break down the tape. Let's look at Coca-Cola. The Coke cups weren't just relegated to a commercial break.
Yeah, no, they were.
They were physically integrated into the set design. They were sitting right there on the judges' desks, front and center.
Impossible to miss.
The judges were actively drinking from them while delivering these highly emotional critiques.
Right.
And Singular Wireless. They weren't just a logo slacked on a screen. They were utilized as the actual voting mechanism.
That was brilliant.
The host of the show would literally look at the camera and tell the audience to pull out their Singular phones, to text their vote, to save their favorite singer from elimination.
So you're highlighting the crucial difference right there. Coke and Singular were integral to the narrative of the program.
A narrative.
Yes, they had a logical, functional reason to be there. They were part of the story.
Right.
Ford, however, took a completely different approach. They largely relied on traditional commercials during the breaks, or they had these highly contrived, irrelevant placements.
Like what?
Like airing a promotional music video featuring the contestants happily washing a Ford car.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember those.
It had absolutely nothing to do with the actual singing competition or the tension of the voting process. It was just an ad.
Wait, hold on. As a listener, I'm struggling with the basic physics of this.
Okay, let's hear it.
The Ford truck was physically on the television screen. The contestants were interacting with it. Millions of photons hit the viewer's retinas.
True.
The visual cortex had to process the image of the vehicle. How can a human brain literally just not record something that was directly in front of its eyes?
It's a great question, and it goes right back to our earlier discussion about the spam filter. You are confusing the physics of sight with the neuroscience of perception.
Oh, interesting distinction.
The brain is not a passive video camera that just lazily records everything in its field of view. It is an active, ruthless meaning-making machine.
Ruthless meaning-making machine.
Yes. When you sit down to watch American Idol, your brain is seeking a narrative. Who will sing the best? Who will the harsh judge insult? Who is going home? That is the narrative thrust.
So my brain is allocating its resources to track that specific story.
Exactly. Think of your brain's memory encoding like saving files to a computer with very, very limited RAM.
Oh.
When Coke is sitting on the judge's desk while he delivers a dramatic verdict, it is part of the scene. Your brain designates it as an essential system file because it's attached to the emotional tension of the narrative.
Right.
And so it devotes processing power to it. When the host tells you to use a singular phone to save a contestant's dream, the phone is the tool of the narrative.
It's crucial to the plot.
Exactly. But the Ford music video, it doesn't advance the plot of American Idol at all.
Not even a little bit.
Your brain's spam filter reads it, realizes it has absolutely nothing to do with the story you care about, and treats it like a pop-up ad.
A pop-up ad.
Their brain's ad blocker shuts it down before it can even write to the hard drive.
That is incredibly illuminating. If your product does not play an integral, logical part in the narrative of what your customer is experiencing, you are invisible.
Invisible, yes.
The photons might hit their eyes, but the memory will never, ever form.
Nope.
So do not just slap your logo on a project, a sponsorship, or a piece of content. If you sponsor a podcast or a local event and your brand has no organic reason to be there, if you don't advance the plot, you are just expensive wallpaper.
It is a really harsh reality for marketers who are used to just buying exposure, just writing a check.
Yeah.
But the data from the SST scans is unequivocal. However, the failure of Ford is actually only half the story here. What happened with Coca-Cola during this experiment actually revealed a neurological mechanism that is far more aggressive and, frankly, a bit intimidating.
Intimidating how? We know Coke worked and Ford didn't because of narrative integration. But you're saying Coke's success actually did something directly to Ford in the minds of the viewers.
Yes, absolutely. The researchers identified a phenomenon they termed the double-barreled effect.
The double-barreled effect.
The SST data revealed that products playing an integral part in the narrative, like the Coke cups on the judges' desks, don't just increase their own memorability.
Okay.
The scans showed that the intense cognitive processing dedicated to Coke actively weakened the subject's ability to remember the other non-integrated brands.
Whoa, wait. So Coke doesn't just win the memory game. They actively make the other guy lose.
Yes.
They suppress the competition.
You're getting at the core problem of cognitive bandwidth here. It is a zero-sum game in your brain.
Zero-sum.
As we established, the brain has finite metabolic resources for encoding memory. When a brain is highly engaged by a narrative-integrated brand, when it sees the judge take a sip of Coke while delivering a devastating critique, it commits intense electrical and chemical resources to encoding that memory.
Because it's tied to that high emotional engagement.
Precisely. And in doing so, it effectively starves competing, non-integrated stimuli of cognitive oxygen.
Starves them of cognitive oxygen. I'm going to use the computer analogy again because it really makes this click for me.
Go for it.
It's like Coke triggers a massive software update in your brain. The operating system says this is critical emotional information, give it 99% of the CPU.
Right.
And because Coke is taking up all that processing power, the background apps like the Ford commercial literally crash. There isn't enough electricity left in your neural network to even illuminate Ford.
That is exactly how it works at a neurological level. The cognitive oxygen is sucked completely out of the room. The brain steals the energy that might have casually noticed Ford and gives it all to Coke to solidify the narrative memory.
That's brutal.
It is. This means that in highly competitive markets, blending in doesn't just mean you get slightly less attention than the other guy.
Right.
It means your competitors who do figure out how to integrate perfectly into the customer's story will actively erase you from the customer's memory.
Erase you.
You are deleted to make room for them.
That is terrifying if you are a business owner spending marketing dollars blindly. You aren't just wasting money, you are financing your own erasure if you don't get the narrative right.
It's a complete paradigm shift. But, while the science is new, these SST caps and real-time millisecond tracking, the blueprint for doing this right is actually quite old.
How so?
We have historical examples that prove this brain science applies universally, way outside of reality television.
Okay, so Coke did this incredibly well on a competitive game show. But does this rule apply to traditional storytelling?
It absolutely does.
Has anyone actually executed this successfully in, say, a scripted movie where the brand isn't a sponsor of a contest, but just a product in the world?
Oh, definitely. In fact, Hollywood figured this out instinctively decades before we had brain scanners.
Really?
Yeah, if we want to see the ultimate historical gold standard of narrative integration, we have to look at Steven Spielberg's classic film, E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Oh, this is the perfect example. Let's talk about the setup here.
Right.
You have a young boy, Elliot,
Right.
and he is trying to lure a terrifying but magical alien out of the dark woods.
Yeah.
What does he use? He doesn't use a generic prop.
No, he doesn't.
He uses a real-world brand. He leaves a trail of Hershey's Reese's Pieces.
And what's really fascinating is the backstory of that choice.
Oh, I love this story.
Spielberg originally wanted to use M&Ms for that scene.
Right.
He actually approached Mars, the parent company of M&Ms, but they notoriously declined.
They said no to E.T.
They did. They didn't want their family-friendly candy associated with a potentially scary, ugly alien movie.
Biggest mistake ever.
Truly. So, Spielberg pivoted to Hershey, who happily agreed to feature Reese's Pieces.
And the result was one of the most famous marketing wins in history. I mean, sales of Reese's Pieces exploded by something like 65% in the months following the film's release.
It was huge.
It put the candy on the map globally. But looking at it through the lens of the SST scans we just talked about, why did it work so well neurologically?
Because it is the purest form of narrative integration. The candy isn't just a prop sitting in the background.
Like the Ford cars.
Right. It is the literal plot device. The story cannot move forward without it. Think about the emotional state of the audience in that specific scene.
High tension.
Extreme tension, wonder, and fear. The viewer's brain is hyper-focused on whether the alien will emerge from the trees.
Right.
The Reese's Pieces are the mechanism of that action. Therefore, the brain tags that brand as deeply significant to the resolution of the narrative tension.
It's the double-barreled effect again.
Exactly.
The brain commits massive resources to the candy because the candy literally equals the alien.
Precisely. We have evolved over millennia to pay attention to narratives, to track causes and effects within a story, to understand how the world works.
Right.
When the Reese's Pieces cause E.T. to step into the light, the brain accepts the brand as a vital tool in this world. It encodes it deeply.
Let's compare that to another Spielberg movie that the source material mentions, Minority Report.
Oh, great example.
This is a sci-fi movie set in the year 2054. There is a specific scene on a train where a passenger is reading an animated digital edition of USA Today.
Right.
It's a very quick shot, but it is highly memorable to audiences. Why is that?
Because it perfectly fits the narrative of a high-tech, slightly dystopian future. It is world building.
World building.
Yeah, it makes logical sense to the viewer's brain that in the future, a newspaper would be a flexible digital screen.
Right.
The brand, USA Today, serves the narrative by grounding this fantastical future in a recognizable reality. The brain accepts it, processes it, and stores it because it helps the viewer understand the rules of the movie's universe.
But the source material also contrasts these massive successes with some high-profile failures. Let's look at the James Bond film Casino Royale.
Oh, yeah.
You have Daniel Craig, incredible action sequences, high stakes, and yet the source notes that the film features these fleeting, somewhat awkward cameo shots of FedEx trucks and Louis Vuitton bags.
Just kind of lingering there.
Right. And just like the Ford commercials on American Idol, these placements are entirely forgotten by the audience, or worse, they actively annoy the audience.
Yeah, and our neuroscience model explains exactly why.
How so?
The brain is constantly asking, does this matter to the story? If a secret agent in a life-or-death shootout suddenly pauses near a delivery truck, or if the camera awkwardly lingers on a designer bag for absolutely no narrative reason, the brain just rejects it.
It breaks the immersion.
Completely. Psychologists call this narrative transport, the feeling of being completely absorbed in a story.
Narrative transport.
Yeah. Clunky, non-integrated product placement shatters narrative transport.
It pulls you right out of the matrix.
Yes, it does.
It triggers that spam filter we talked about at the very beginning. Your brain suddenly realizes, wait, this isn't a story about a spy anymore. This is a commercial for a purse.
Exactly. If a movie hero is mastering new gym equipment in a training montage or drinking a specific brand of beer to calm his nerves before a bar fight, the product makes sense.
It has a narrative function.
Right. It tells us something about the character's state of mind or preparation. But if the action hero just happens to be using a highly visible strawberry-flavored dental floss in the middle of a suspense scene,
The brain flags it as an anomaly.
exactly, it categorizes it as an ad, shuts down the emotional engagement, and dumps the memory right into the trash.
So let me bring this down to earth for a second, because most of our listeners aren't funding James Bond movies or American Idol.
Fair enough.
How does a regular entrepreneur use this? Does this mean, for example, that a local tech startup shouldn't sponsor a community food festival unless they can actually make their software part of the eating experience?
That's exactly what it means.
Like, if they just pay $1,000 to hang a vinyl banner over the entrance, they shouldn't bother.
According to this data, yes, that is the exact logical conclusion.
Wow.
If the brand isn't a good match with the event, or if it doesn't integrate into what the attendees are actually experiencing, the audience will just tune it out. A banner is just more wallpaper.
Thicker wallpaper.
All right. The attendees' brains will treat that banner the exact same way they treat a pop-up ad on a website. But if that local tech startup creates an app that festival goers must use to vote for their favorite dish.
Oh, much like Singular on American Idol.
Exactly. Now they are part of the narrative of the festival. Now they're a functional tool. Now they're memorable.
Or like, if you run a local hardware store, don't just sponsor a Little League team by putting your logo on their jerseys.
Right.
Provide the actual chalk they use to line the fields and make sure everyone knows the field exists because of your tools.
Yeah.
You have to become part of the action.
That is a perfect application of the principle. This requires a fundamental shift in how businesses think about visibility.
It really does.
It is no longer about impressions, reach, or the sheer volume of eyeballs. It is entirely about relevance, context, and integration.
Which really brings us to the core soul of this entire deep dive.
Hmm.
We've looked at the failure of traditional repetition and the rule of 7.
We have.
We've seen how a $26 million investment can just evaporate into thin air if it lacks narrative context.
Poof! Like the dust cloud.
Exactly. We've seen the literal brain scans, the SST caps, proving that the human mind actively deletes competing brands to favor the ones that tell a compelling story.
The double-barreled effect.
Right. So if we weave all of this together, we arrive at one singular, inescapable insight for anyone trying to get noticed today.
In an era of unprecedented, relentless information overload, the brain's primary defense mechanism is narrative.
Narrative is the defense mechanism.
Yes. Storytelling isn't just an art form for novelists and filmmakers. It is a hardwired biological sorting mechanism.
It's how we filter the world.
It is how the human brain decides what lives in long-term memory and what dies in the automatic spam folder.
Attention can no longer be bought. You cannot throw $26 million at a television network and demand that people remember you.
You really can't.
You cannot use brute force repetition to hammer your logo into someone's consciousness. True attention, the kind of attention that drives memory and behavior, must be earned through profound narrative integration.
Whether you are a small entrepreneur trying to get your first 10 loyal customers or a Fortune 500 company trying to protect your global market share, the biological rule is exactly the same.
The brain doesn't care about your budget.
Nope. If you are not essential to the story your customer is experiencing, you are just wallpaper. And wallpaper gets ignored.
It's a sobering thought, but also incredibly empowering.
I think so, yeah.
It means that creativity, cleverness, and deep empathy for your customer's journey matter infinitely more than just having a massive ad budget. The smart player can beat the rich player if they understand how to write themselves into the script.
It does level the playing field quite a bit, but it also leaves us with a rather profound and perhaps unsettling question to ponder as we wrap up today.
Okay, what is it?
Well, we've seen today how our brains are so easily manipulated by a compelling story that we actually develop localized amnesia for the things that don't fit that story.
Right.
The brain literally alters its memory encoding based on narrative context. So what happens when a product goes even further?
Further than the double-barreled effect.
Yeah. What happens when a product transcends being just a useful part of a story and becomes a literal physical compulsion? What happens when human biology overrides free will entirely?
Oh, that is exactly where we are heading. Because as deep into the brain scans as we went today, we haven't even touched the most powerful biological triggers marketers are discovering right now.
Not even close.
Next time, we're going to explore a phenomenon Steve Jobs witnessed on the streets of New York with a simple pair of white iPod headphones.
That's a great story.
We will uncover the hidden mirror neurons in your brain that bypass logic entirely and literally force you to say, I'll have what she's having.
You are going to see how imitation isn't just a form of flattery. It's hardwired into our neurology at a cellular level.
You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember that $26 million mistake. Make sure you aren't just putting your product on the stage. Make sure it's an essential part of the script.